Have you been told you need to stop doing what you love, whether it's exercise, running, or a sport? Well, here at Dynamic, we don't like that answer. In this podcast, we'll talk to leaders in the health and wellness space from Southwest Florida to get the solutions you need to get you back to doing what you love. Welcome to the Dynamic Naples Podcast. Hey, what's going on? It's Dr. Chris here. Today I want to talk about why pain is worse at night and what can you do about it. Okay, so I wrote a blog about this. I'm pretty much just going to skim over what I wrote. I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. So I'm sure you've noticed that most things get worse at night, either if you have a cold or if you're dealing with like a swollen knee. And there's a simple reason for that. Well, there's two really. It's the lack of two different things, cortisol and lack of movement. So cortisol, it's got a bad reputation. It's known as the stress hormone. And what that really means is that's basically the primary driver when your sympathetic nervous system is activated. This is basically the fight or flight response. I kind of think of this as like the on mode. So one of cortisol's main roles is to liberate glucose from the muscle and liver and into the bloodstream as a quick fuel source, as opposed to fats, because fats, although they're energy dense, they're a little harder to burn, so carbs are a little more readily available. So when you are on, the body up-regulates some systems of the body and down-regulates others. This is good because it basically prioritizes survival. So the sympathetic nervous system suppresses systems that aren't vital when there's an emergency. For example, the digestive system, which, by the way, I wrote another blog on this. You shouldn't watch TV or especially the news, anything that kind of engages you while you're eating because it down-regulates your digestive system. You'll actually absorb less nutrients from your food. And the reproductive system is also suppressed because you probably are not going to want to mate with an aggressor. So the immune system, which is responsible for the inflammatory response, is also suppressed. So cortisol is an extremely potent anti-inflammatory, which makes sense, right? Cortisone cream, prednisone, these are all basically synthetic versions of cortisol. So I want to point out that inflammation is the first step of healing, and some powerful things happen during sleep to help you repair. So that combination of inflammation and repair at night is a really good thing, but that's where the problem begins. So the body doesn't really have any extra space laying around, so even just a few extra cc's of pressure can be really painful. In fact, I had a tooth infection once, and I had swelling about the size of a golf ball on my cheek. And the inflammation was strong enough that it pressed on my facial nerve and half my face went numb. It was really bad. I had to sleep upright. So we don't want to suppress the immune system too much because we want that healing to occur. However, at a certain point, it becomes difficult to sleep, which impairs healing. So there is a pattern to cortisol, a daily pattern. So as soon as you wake up and light hits your eyes, the sympathetic nervous system is triggered and you get a spike to start your day. Many of my patients tell me that their pain is bad in the morning, but once they get moving, it starts to go away. This is in part due to that anti-inflammatory effect of cortisol. Melatonin, by the way, is basically the opposite. So in the morning, it's high, you get up, it descends, basically flat lines, and then hopefully as the evening comes around and the sun goes down, it starts to rise so you can fall asleep. So melatonin and cortisol are opposites. So cortisol is lowest in the evening in a healthy person. There are some patterns that kind of reverse that, but that's a whole different story, a whole different podcast. So, that cold that you might be fighting off or that swollen knee can get worse because that cortisol has dropped. We don't want to spike cortisol because that will inhibit melatonin and then it becomes really hard to sleep. So you might be thinking, well, why not take an Advil or ibuprofen or something like that? Well, that will definitely reduce the inflammation, but this is an important point here. Inflammation and swelling are two different things. Inflammation is stage one of healing. Swelling is the leftover components of that whole process. So you don't want to block inflammation, but you do want to mitigate the swelling. So I got this analogy from Gary Reinl, the anti-ice guy. If there was a car accident on the highway, you wouldn't want to set up a blockade before the scene of the accident. You'd want the ambulance to arrive, right? And then the cleanup crew would come by and clean up the debris. This is similar. You may be inhibiting the healing process if you take an Advil. Not to mention it's tough on the cardiovascular system and the gut. It can really wipe out your gut flora. However, as I said, you do want to mitigate swelling. So how do we go about this? Swelling is handled by your lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is similar to the cardiovascular system, so where there's blood vessels, there's lymph nodes, there's lymph channels. The thing is the cardiovascular system has a pump, which is known as the heart, and that creates circulation, whereas the lymphatic system does not have a heart. It relies on the pump action of muscles to create circulation. So this is problem number 2. At night, you tend to be more sedentary, so swelling basically festers. But because of this, it can also be the solution. So gentle movement stimulates lymphatic flow, and it doesn't really take much, and it works pretty darn well. So generally, you want to move the area that hurts in as pain-free as possible, and then you want to follow up with some belly breathing. So there's a duct, like the main duct of the lymphatic system is called the cisterna chyli, and it rests underneath your diaphragm. So if you're doing some belly breathing, so think as you inhale, belly rises, as you exhale, it descends, and it compresses down that cisterna chyli, which works like a pump to pump it up to your chest where it needs to drain. And if you do this enough, you might feel the urge to urinate, and that's actually a good thing. That's your body basically recycling and get rid of some of that waste. So the bottom line is that you want to mitigate rather than inhibit the inflammation and swelling process. So some examples, if you're dealing with some back pain, back stiffness, you could lay on your back. If you can do this with gravity assist, that's like an extra point, a bonus point. So lay on your back, bend your knees, and just rock your knees back and forth so it induces trunk rotation. It's a really easy way to squeeze out some of the swelling that might be in between the discs and vertebrae. If you've got some knee pain, something called a short quad would work well. So you bolster your knee, put your knee at maybe a 30 or 40 degree angle, and you just do some leg extension and do it, 30, 40, 50 reps, something like that, and treat that knee like a pump. Biking, by the way, if you have access to a bike, is a great way to do the same thing. For the shoulder, you can do pendulums. You just bend over and you just turn your arm into basically a wet noodle and do little circles. That's a great way to create some rotational movement and pump out any swelling in the shoulder. So those are just a few examples. If you want to see the video on that, it's on my blog, which I'll post in the show notes. So that's all I have for you this week. I'll talk to you soon. Why guess when you can test? Do you get hangry or crash after a carb-heavy meal? These could be indicators that there is a dysfunction in your blood glucose regulation. If left unchecked, it can lead to irreversible changes. If you catch it quick enough, you can make diet and lifestyle changes that will get your levels where they need to be. 88% of Americans are pre-diabetic and don't know it. Diabetes underpins many of the pathologies we deal with in this country, such as obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. For some reason, it is rarely screened with your physician, and if they do test for blood glucose, it's usually with an A1C or a fasting glucose, which can sometimes give you a false negative. NutriSense is a company that supplies continuous glucose monitors. We've paired with NutriSense to get you real-time data to see how your physiology responds to glucose. The NutriSense app lets you track your daily activity to see how food, sleep, exercise, and stress impact your glucose. You can log or import this data into the NutriSense app to see the effect on your blood glucose levels as soon as it happens. Use the code DrChris25 for $25 off your order today. Do you have unexplained pain, or do you wonder just how healthy you are? When was the last time you had your blood tested? Blood chemistry analysis is a great tool to stay ahead of any health conditions, and now you can have control of your health with Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an incredible company that sends blood tests to your home. You can choose from over 30 different tests, whether that's thyroid function, testosterone, micronutrient, cholesterol, or C-reactive protein, which is a marker for inflammation. It is sent to you with free shipping, and you get results in 2 to 5 days. No physician referral needed. Use the code DPT25 for 25% off. You can find links in the show notes. Did you know that you can get started with physical therapy without a physician's referral? Physical therapists don't just solve pain, we get down to the root cause and keep it from coming back. We also discuss all things health, such as nutrition and lifestyle changes. If you feel that you could use some help, let's get on a free consult call. Go to www.dynamicnaples.com and sign up for a free call. Also, if you like this podcast, please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts.
it helps us spread the message. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.